I'm Craig Hohenberger with Action Coach Business Coaching, and I'm the master franchise owner for 4 states here in the Midwest. Most of the attendees here are going to be Action Coach clients, maybe a few strategic partners, other businesses, but they're all business owners, Michelle. So it's my pleasure. I'm super excited to be joined by Michelle Seiler Tucker. She's the founder and CEO of Seiler and Tucker Incorporated. She is one of the foremost mergers and acquisitions experts in the nation, and one of only 3 women in the entire United States who holds mergers and acquisitions Master Intermediary title. I think I got that right. And a 20-year veteran. She's sold over 1,000 businesses, and she's a #1 best-selling author in her space, and she's soon to be releasing what will be her next bestseller, Exit Rich. So we'll learn a little bit more about that here shortly. But a wealth of experience buying and selling businesses. So I'm certain you're going to get some phenomenal information out of this today. And I'm gonna interview Michelle, and we're going to open this up for Q&A. So if you've got any specific questions as a business owner that you would like to ask about, positioning your business to sell or potentially buying another business, feel free to either put it in the chat box directly and we'll address it, or send it to Scott Hevel, who's helping moderate this, and he'll make sure that we get all the questions answered as we go. So thanks for being here, everybody. For those of you who know us at Action Coach, obviously you know that we're all about finishing the business. Get your business positioned and finished so that you can sell it for as much money as you want in the end, for the biggest price point. Some people look at their businesses and think, I don't really want to sell yet. I don't know what, all that kind of thing. Don't worry about that. We really want to finish it. We want to be prepared because someday there's going to be an exit. At some point, you're going to have to retire or move on, or you're going to die. Every one of us is going to die at some point. So, and that's okay. So plan to finish your business at some point. So I'm going to dive in with Michelle. So Michelle, why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into mergers and acquisitions in the first place?
Sure. Hi, Craig. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you back.
I didn't wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm going to sell businesses." But I will tell you, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always had entrepreneurship in my blood. I was never your typical little girl who played with toys and dolls and things like that. I would walk around with a notebook and ask everybody a bunch of questions, because I was so curious about people and what they do and how they do it. And I started asking those questions at the age of 5. So
Wow.
my mom's like, "Oh, she's going to be the next Barbara Walters." But I knew then that I was going to do something entrepreneurial wise. And I knew then that I was going to be a writer and I would always help people. And so I've owned lots of different businesses and lots of different industries. And that's really what makes me unique as a mergers and acquisitions advisor, is because I've been there.
Yeah.
I've done it. I've been on the other side of the desk, and most business brokers or M&A advisors haven't. So that's a big difference. But anyway, so I've always been in entrepreneurship. I did kind of get sucked into corporate America, working for a Fortune 500 company. I went to work for Xerox. They recruited me, offered me a really healthy salary to go into sales. And then right away, my nickname became the closer at Xerox. So my manager came to me within 6 months and said, "Michelle, you need to apply for regional vice president. You won't get it because you've been here for 6 months. You'll be up against everybody else that's been here 5, 10, 15 years, but you should do it anyway." And I'm like, "Why would I apply for something I'm never going to get?" And she says, "Because of the experience, right? Xerox has the best training in the world." And she says, "You're going to learn so much through this 3-month process." Anyway, so I did it. I ended up getting it. So I guess I truly am the closer. And very, very quickly, though, when I transitioned into vice president from a salesperson, I realized very quickly, wow, I don't like this. Because I like dealing with clients. I like making friendships that last a lifetime. I like solving problems. I like coming up with solutions. When you're in the corporate ladder at a major Fortune 500 company, you're having meetings to schedule meetings to schedule more follow-up meetings.
Exactly.
But I was making a good salary, great benefits. But I told my husband I miss entrepreneurship.
Mm.
So I said, I need to do something. So we stumbled across a franchise. My husband actually knew the founder. And I said, look, I want to buy a franchise from you. And I'll, hire employees and run it on the side. Anyway, they said, no, we know of your reputation. We know you're a closer. We want you to partner with us. We'll give you equity and then we'll give you a franchise. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not going to quit Xerox, my 6-figure position with great benefits as a vice president for a franchise that has 2 locations. I said, but I'll tell you what I will do, because it doesn't have to be yes or no. Sometimes it can be in the middle, right?
Right.
So I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. For 6 months, I will fly around the country, attend all these trade shows, and see how it goes and still keep my job with Xerox. And I did that for 6 months. And I sold so many franchises. I made more money. I think I quadrupled what I was making at Xerox in 3 months. So I knew it was time for me to leave corporate America and get back into my entrepreneurship career. However, what happened was the franchisor did a lot. They ended up doing what most business owners do. They build a business, but they don't really build a business. They set up what they call a foundation, but it's really not a foundation. And they start marketing, they start selling, but they lack in service. So this franchisor never really built a foundation to handle the growth. I sold over 300 franchises in a very short period of time, but they can never handle the growth. So they were overpromising and under-delivering.
Sure.
So then I figured out very quickly, our values do not align. I'm team franchisee and they're team franchisor. So they were getting very upset with me because I was always taking my client's side. Anyway, I'm like, you need to buy me out, because this is not working. Our values do not align. So then after they bought me out, I said, gosh, what am I going to do next? And then I figured I would transition into selling businesses, because how hard could it be to sell an existing business when I've been selling franchises?
Exactly.
Very hard. Going from selling franchises to selling businesses is very different. So anyway, I transitioned in selling small businesses at first, but then rather quickly we started selling businesses 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20 and up. But I learned very quickly in that process, Craig, that what Steve Forbes says is so true. 8 out of 10 businesses do not sell.
Right.
8 out of 10. So thank God for action coaching, because what would some of these business owners do if they didn't have action coaching to help them finish, to help them, get the business ready for sale?
Right. And Michelle, that's 8 out of 10 who try to sell. Is that correct?
That's 8 out of 10 who try to sell. That's absolutely correct. And that's by Steve Forbes. That's not by me. Steve Forbes did endorse Exit Rich, which was great. So I did start fixing businesses and growing them and put them on a build to sell program. So I will invest money, time, energy, and effort, partner with business owners to help them get their business sellable, buy businesses, sometimes flip them. But we really specialize in selling companies.
Yeah.
But action coaching has the whole model that I was just going to say. Action coaching has a whole model.
Exactly. And so Exit Rich will be your second book on buying.
It's actually my third book.
Third book. Okay. So why did you write this book if you've already got a couple of books out there that are about the same topic?
Yeah. So, well, they're not all about the same topic. My first book was Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth in 2013.
Okay.
And then I wrote a contributing chapter in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill Foundation's book. I have written a book on the buy side and how to acquire wealth through acquisitions and how to grow your business through acquisitions, but we haven't published that one yet. And the reason we haven't published that one yet is because I feel that this topic about business and businesses staying in business so they can exit is more relevant and needed more right now than ever before. Because when I wrote Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth in 2013, I did the research, Craig, and learned that 85 to 95% of all startups would fail, right?
Right.
So those startups within 1 to 5 years would fail. We all know that. That's common knowledge. But here's what y'all probably don't know. I started noticing, because I've been in this industry 20 years in the trenches, all these storefronts are closing. All these businesses are closing down. You'll drive by a street and go, oh, what happened to that business? What happened to that business? What happened to this business? So that's what inspired me to write Exit Rich and do more research. So when I did the research again, I learned very quickly that it's not that the business landscape has changed dramatically. It's actually flip-flopped, meaning, and this is before COVID, meaning that only 30% of startups will now fail. Only 30% of those startups from 1 to 5 years. However, out of 27.6 million companies, those businesses have been in business 10 years or longer are at greater risk, and 70% of them will go out of business. 70%. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but you hear about it every day. But you only hear about the public companies. You hear about Toys R Us, you hear about Kmart, Steinmart, Pier 1, GNC is closing down 900 locations. But you're not hearing about all the private businesses on every street corner in every town, in every city, in every state across our great nation. These businesses, unfortunately, are dropping like flies, and they're being forced to sell for pennies on the dollar, close their business, or file bankruptcy. And unfortunately, when business owners file bankruptcy, many of them will lose not just their business assets, but their family assets too, because they
Mhm.
commingled funds and they pierce that corporate veil. So it's really my passion and mission to try to help save small business. And that's why I wrote Exit Rich, for those two reasons. 70% of businesses are going out of business, and 8 out of 10 businesses are not selling.
Wow, that's astounding statistics, and all that lost time, energy, money, blood, sweat, tears, people
Yeah.
putting payroll on a credit card at times to end up going out of business and not be able to sell their business and fund their retirement.
Yeah, and I have a real sweet spot for business owners because I've been in business and I've seen it firsthand. And it's so sad because a lot of these business owners are baby boomers, and they've, like you just said, they've invested their heart, their soul, their energy, their money. They made huge, huge sacrifices along the way. I mean, I got a client right now that says, Michelle, we haven't taken a vacation in 10 years. That's a huge sacrifice. I have another client that says, I've never been to any of my kids' soccer games, any of
Exactly.
my kids' plays, any of my kids' sporting events. So it is sad. So it's really my mission. And I'm glad we're teaming up together because it's my mission and my passion to try to save as many businesses as I can so that they too can exit rich, and
Exactly.
sell their asset for their desired price tag.
Exactly. Which so aligns with our mission, which is help as many businesses as we possibly can to grow to be very successful and transition from generation to generation, and then all that impact that they have
Right.
with their employees and families, and the families of their employees and their customers or suppliers, the communities. Like you said, it's small business. We see the large corporations that go bankrupt because they make all the newspapers, but just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of small businesses are going out of business every day of the week.
And it's upsetting that, and this is before COVID, it's
Right.
upsetting that the media is not talking about it, because small business is a backbone of our economy. There's over 30.2 small businesses in the United States, employing over half the US workforce. If we don't support small business and get behind small business and save small business, then we're going to lose more jobs. It's going to impact economy. Then more businesses are going to close down because you lose spending power. It's a domino effect.
It really is. It absolutely is. So
Yeah.
it's so awesome to partner with somebody like you who is such an expert in the selling side of the business, and you're very different than a lot of people in your space. Like, you really get it in terms of building the right culture and the right team, and you're not just doing the transaction. You're
Mhm.
very much aligned with us in terms of our approach to things. So, Michelle, you talk about different types of businesses and why it's so important to know your type of business.
Mhm.
Why is that? Uh,
So in Exit Rich, I outline, the 7 types of different businesses. And it's very important to know what type of business you have in order to know what type of business you want to create and what type of business you want to sell. Because some businesses, well, there's lots of businesses that will sell way quicker than other businesses. Okay. One of those businesses is what I call the one woman man or one woman show. And that's like, let's say we have a dental practice, one dentist, one dentist, hygienist, assistants, one dentist. I take that dentist out of the practice. What do we have?
right.
So when you have a business where that business is completely dependent upon you, and you take that person out of the business, most buyers won't buy that business because buyers want to buy a job, not a business. Plus, they want to make sure the clients are going to stay. And dentistry is very personal, right? So the only way I can sell that dental practice is to take that purchase price and tie that purchase price to that dentist staying there for a period of time, or work with the dentist to where he can hire associates. That plan doesn't always work because if he could have hired associates, if it was easy, they would have already done it, right?
Right.
So the one woman show, one woman man business, that's chiropractors. You know, chiropractors have a difficult time selling because if you have one chiropractor, you take them out of the business. Dental practices, real estate brokers sometimes has a hard time if they don't have a team of real estate agents. Interior decorators have a hard time. So that's what we call the one woman, one show business. And then the small businesses that are really dependent upon the owners, like the coffee shops, you know, small dry cleaners, small restaurants, you know, they might have 3 or 4 employees. This is a difficult business to sell to. Now, it can be sold, but it's probably going to be sold to first time buyers. There's 5 different types of buyers, and it's not going to get maximum value. So, you know, it really goes back to planning your exit and knowing what you want to sell your business for in the future to determine what type of business you should own. So we're never going to maximize value if we have a one woman man or one woman show business, or we're never going to maximize value if we have a small business with 3 or 4 employees that depend upon us. And then you have the business owner that's been in business for decades, same owner. You know, this business could be really good and really get maybe a higher multiple as long as they've stayed current with technology and times. Like we once sold a distribution company and they had 0 computers, no computers. Everything was on a Rolodex.
Wow.
So we actually had to go in there and analyze how much it would cost to bring the business up to today's, you know, technology. And then that had to be subtracted from the purchase price of the business.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because the other option was the seller needs to bring the business up to speed. And the seller didn't want to do that. So, and then the other type of business is a business that's been in business for a long time. Maybe, you know, EBITDA is over $1 million. They have, you know, 20, 25, 50, 100 employees or more. And the business is doing really well, operating on all 6 Ps. This is what we call middle market business. And that will be sold for maximum value. Plus, we'll have probably lots and lots of buyers. There are more buyers for good businesses than there are good businesses to buy.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Michelle.
Yeah.
There's a lot of private equity money out there, a lot of people looking to buy businesses. But to your point, that one owner operator business, it's really that they own a job. Yeah,
They own a job, and buyers want to buy a business, not a job. Yeah.
exactly. There's so much risk to the buyer coming in and buying that person who owns a job because they know that when that person leaves, all the clients and any key employees are going to probably leave too, or they're at risk of it. So then they, like you said, they have to stay there and work for them for a number of years,
Right.
which isn't the purpose. You really don't want to do that, or they depress the price point, or both. And
Right.
uh,
Or the price is, you know, this is the price, but then there's an earnout attached to them staying for 2 years, or there's a seller financing component that's also attached to that owner for staying on for so many years. I mean, we're trying to sell dental practice right now, and the owner is 67 years old, and it's like, I'm not staying on and I'm not hiring associates. I'm like, well, you really don't have any other choices because you either have to stay on or you have to hire somebody.
yeah. In fact, when I first got into Action Coach, and one of my first clients owns a dental practice, and
Yep.
he was that single dentist owner at the time. And as we talked about what he wanted to do with the future of his business, he really didn't want to think about selling. He's like, oh my gosh, I make good money now. Didn't want to grow it too far because he turns out he was a preacher's kid growing up. He felt a little bit guilty about the kind of money he was already making. And as we talked about it, and we're building this great culture in his business, I really challenged him on, you owe it to the community to grow this and give more people jobs, and you owe it to the future, and your faith is really important to you. So what kind of legacy do you really want to leave behind? Let's grow this anyway. If you're happy with your income, let's just cap your income and let's just build a bigger legacy for the future and more employees to work in this great business that it can succeed feed you so that they don't lose their jobs when you go away someday. And
Right.
today he's got 8 or 9 offices with 4 or 5 dentists per office. He doesn't do any dentistry anymore. He just,
That's wonderful.
yeah. And so that's really the whole purpose. And
Mhm.
his business today would be way more saleable than it was originally, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely, because you take that one location with just him versus 9 locations, and he's not even involved in the business operates without him, and that's what buyers are looking for. Buyers are looking to buy a business that doesn't involve the owner. And that was a great story you told, because it really, a lot of what we do as far as getting a business ready for sale and taking sellers through the seller sanity check, it's all about mindset.
Yeah.
And it's all about mindset around money. It's all about mindset around, you know, um, thinking you're making too much, or maybe growing up as a preacher's son, etc. So we really work with our clients to work on that mindset, um, so they are comfortable with building a business, so that they can build the community and then donate. The more money you make, the more money you can give away and help others.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. You have so many more choices to help so many more people on
Right.
this planet, in your community, in your family.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see that business owners make?
So there's a lot, but one of the biggest, and this is why 8 out of 10 businesses don't sell. And these are all common mistakes. But the biggest is that business owners just don't plan their exit. Just like you said, they don't think about selling, because like you said about the dentist, he was happy where he was. He had just amount of money that he felt comfortable with based upon his upbringing, or based upon his value system, and that's okay. Um, but the biggest issue is that they don't plan. They don't think about it. Business owners don't think about selling until they have to, due to a catastrophic event occurring, internal or external. So they'll come to me after somebody's died, after there's health issues, after there's divorce, partner disputes, embezzlement. I mean, that's another big reason. Or COVID. I mean, we have a lot of business owners coming to us now that want to sell because of COVID. Now, guess what? It's not just because they want to sell because of COVID, because their business is not doing well. Some industries are experiencing massive growth right now, and are like, this is a time to sell.
Yep.
But typically, when you're trying to sell during a catastrophic event, Craig, your business is typically trending downward, not upward. And when it's trending downward, that's the worst time to sell. The best time to sell your business is when your business is doing well. You don't want to be caught in that 70% statistic of going out of business and having to be forced to sell for pennies on the dollar. So the big thing is planning. That's the biggest mistake that owners make, is that haven't planned their business for sale, and they haven't built a business that buyers actually want to buy.
Exactly. And you make such a great point, Michelle. If we plan that we're going to have to sell someday, because we will,
Mhm.
because like you said,
Yes,
internally or externally, something's going to happen that we can't be here anymore. And
correct.
if we plan for that day, it doesn't mean we have to sell. Once we have our business prepared to sell, it means we can keep operating the business like the dentist I just mentioned,
Yeah.
who's really not doing dentistry anymore, but he's still running the business from the
Right.
CEO level. But he's prepared to sell that thing in a minute when he wants to, or when
He's
some.
become an actual business owner, not an employee anymore, because he was working for his own business.
Yep, exactly. So, um, we both agree that you need a plan from day one. What's your model for
Yeah.
planning that exit from day one?
Yeah. And I just wanted to add on to what you were saying. Just because you plan for your exit doesn't mean you have to exit. But
Right.
if you plan for a business and put all the steps in place and build your business to run on the 6 P's, and we'll talk about the 6 P's in a minute, then guess what you'll have? You'll have a sustainable, scalable, and profitable business that when you're ready will be sellable. And
And I wanted to add on that too. Sometimes we see business owners a lot that say, well, I want to sell in 10 years, or I want to sell in 12 years.
mhm,
Well, you know what? That's great, but life happens.
yeah,
Things like COVID happen, things like that kind of stuff happen. And all of a sudden, now you're forced to do something in a different time frame than you originally planned.
yeah.
So we ought to be thinking about this constantly from day one. Let's get this in position that if something unexpected happens, I'm ready to go and my family's taken care of, my employees are taken care of, whatever legacy I want to leave behind is still taken care of, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I received a very sad phone call not too long ago from a lady probably in her late 70s, and her husband had died, dropped dead of a heart attack, unexpected. He was in great health, she said. Now, I don't know, she was in the late 70s, but I would say late 60s, 70s, somewhere around there. I didn't ask her age. But at any rate, he dropped dead, and she asked me, can you please help me sell the business? And it's a construction business. And I said, absolutely, I would love to help any way I can. And I started asking her questions,
Yeah.
first and foremost, tell me, how many employees do y'all have? And I took her through all the questions. She said, we don't have any employees. My husband had all subcontractors, all 1099s. I said, okay, tell me about the processes. Tell me about the client list. Tell me about the database. And I'm asking all these questions that a buyer's going to ask to buy a business. And she goes, Michelle, I don't have anything. He didn't leave anything. He did no succession planning whatsoever. He didn't build a business that was actually sellable in the case that he drops dead, because if he had, I could have sold it for her and I could have got her out of debt and I could have made some money for her. But he didn't build a sellable business. So now she's, in her late 60s, 70s, and she is left with all of this debt. So that's really, really sad. You want to make sure that you just don't plan for you, but you plan for your successors, right? And you never know when something could happen to any of us. So my exit model is what I call the GPS exit model, the Seiler Tucker GPS exit model. And when you want to drive anywhere, what do? You pull out your phone, right?
Yep.
Pull out your phone, you plug in your destination.
Yep.
You know where you're going. You have an end game. You know where you're driving to. The problem with a lot of business owners is they have no destination.
That's right.
They have no end game. They don't know where they're driving to. So therefore they drive around aimlessly, going around in circles, driving up and down those financial hills, ending up nowhere.
That's right.
And in the case of this lady I just talked about, ending up nowhere and worse, because now she's in debt and she doesn't know how to get out of debt. So come up with a destination.
Yeah.
Plug in your destination. Come up with your end game. What do you want to sell your business for? What is your desired price tag? Pick a number. So
Yeah.
let's say you want to sell your business for $20 million. Maybe you sell for less, maybe you sell for more, but guess what? It's a start. You need to start somewhere. So pick a number. So let's say you want to sell for $20 million. Then you need to know, what do you need to know from your GPS? Where are you starting from? What is your current location? So in business, it's what is your current valuation? What is your business worth today? You'd be surprised, Craig. We all go get annual physical checkups, right? We
Yeah.
all bring our car into the shop to get service and get maintenance and get a checkup. But we never get a checkup, evaluation on our business to know what our business is worth on an annual basis.
How
I
many
can,
how many people come to you? How many of your clients that come to you and say, "Hey, can you help me sell my business?" have ever had a valuation done prior to showing up and talking
I
to you?
would say 95%.
Yeah, and so you
Yep.
great point. We get an annual physical every day or every year. We check our gas gauges in our car every day to make sure should we get more gas or not. We're always measuring the
We
key.
check the air in our tires.
Most people should know what their 401k balances are or their stock portfolio is. Most people know approximately what their house is valued at. And
Right.
for business owners, the business should be the biggest asset that they have.
Absolutely.
Typically for business owners, all their other assets, because of the personal guarantees and things like that, are attached to their business in some form or fashion as collateral or whatever, oftentimes, depending on how they've structured it. So the other assets are potentially at risk. And
Right.
oftentimes they don't even know what their current business is worth. And it's the most important asset that they have.
Absolutely. So, and it's so mind boggling to me how many business owners have no idea what their business is worth. And the reason I say you should do it every year is because there are external events that can increase your valuation and
Mhm.
external events that can decrease your evaluation. Look at COVID.
Good.
COVID has increased it. You know, I've got an agriculture company right now because of some of the programs that the government has put in place. They've won these bids. Their EBITDA's going to be 15, $17 million this year. They're up like 365%,
Mm.
and we're going to be able to monetize on that. So there are industries that have really been able to
Right.
increase their valuation, but then on the flip side, there's other industries that have decreased it. So every year you need to gauge, you need that gauge to know where what your business is worth every single year, and then make sure you have projections.
Right.
So back to the GPS exit model, number one, know your end game. What do you want to sell your business for? Number two, know your current situation, your current valuation, what you're worth. So let's say you want to sell for 20 million and you're worth $5 million today. Okay.
Right.
So $20 million worth $5 million today. Now you have to have a time frame.
Yep.
So the time frame can be shortened, the time frame can be longer. So it's like any goals, it can be tweaked, but you just have to have a plan. We're trying to
Exactly.
get business owners to go from no plan to a plan.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to do it in 7 years, that you want to exit in 7 years. So now we have a start of a plan. We know we want to sell for $20 million. We know we're worth $5 million today. And we know we want to do it for 7 years. That's our target date. Now we need to know, well, who's our buyers going to be?
Yeah.
Not buyer. Let me repeat, not buyer, but buyers, because so many owners will say, well, Michelle, I have a buyer. Okay, come back to me when that buyer falls apart. Because you should never put all of your eggs in one buyer's basket. Number one, that's not the best way to negotiate and sell your business for the highest value. And number two, 80, 90% of deals will fall apart. So
Right.
you always have to have backup buyers. So you got to determine, okay, what buyers are going to be interested in my business? There's 5 types of buyers. Well, here's who's not going to be interested. Here's who can't buy your business. A first-time buyer is not going to buy your business if you're selling it for $20 million. First-time buyers buy small businesses because they're typically leaving corporate America and they have so much money to work with, right?
Yep.
And they're typically asking the seller to hold a note and do seller financing. Then you got your private equity buyers. Private equity buyers buy 2 ways. They buy based on platforms and add-ons. So let's say private equity buyer wants to get into agriculture, like we have an agricultural company we're selling right now between 60 to 70 million. And let's say they want to get into agriculture. They won't even look at a business unless it has at least 3 million to $5 million in EBITDA. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So they need at least $3 to $5 million, somewhat more, in EBITDA to even consider that business as a platform.
Right.
Now,
Because it's too
let's say, what's that?
because it's too small otherwise. If it's not at least of a certain size, they're not even interested.
Correct. But they will do what's called an add on. So let's say they're already in an agriculture business and they see a potato farm that they're interested in buying.
Yep.
That's just called add on. So PEGs always add on to their platforms. Then they'll look at those businesses that are under $1 million for an add on, under $1 million in EBITDA. Otherwise, it has to be at least 3 million and up. And then you have competitive and strategic buyers. Now, competitive and strategic buyers are really good because they buy synergies, especially strategics. So if you can find, like, let me give you some examples. What's really popular right now is having electrical companies, plumbing companies, AC companies all under one roof, right? So an electrical is a strategic to buying a plumbing company.
Right.
Okay. Strategics buy synergies. And when we go into the 6Ps, I'll explain the synergies, but they will pay more money and outbid other buyers because they want that database or because they want those contracts or because they want that talent base or because they want a synergy. They want those patents. They want something that you have that would catapult their business to the next level. They also look at, if I buy this business, I have all these distribution centers. I already have operations. I could cut this company's cost in half and double my EBITDA from day one.
Right.
They also look at economies of scale. So they're always looking at how can I grow the EBITDA really, really quickly. And a lot of them can grow the EBITDA without increasing marketing. It's just by decreasing costs because they already have the
Yeah,
operations in place. Does that make sense?
exactly. In fact, in my corporate days prior to Action Coach, I was involved in the integration side of acquisitions. And
Right.
we would buy companies like that. We would strip out a lot of the costs because we had the
Hmm.
purchasing, we had the sales, they were
Right.
synergistic buys because they sold into the same customers we already sold to. We just added them to our game and juiced the profits immediately, just because they were under our umbrella.
And that's what strategics do. That's what private equity groups do, strategics do, competitors do. Those are really the best of the best of the five types of buyers because they're buying synergies and they're not always getting caught up in just the EBITDA. Does that make sense?
So it's important as a business owner to be thinking and preparing as you're preparing for your future exit. Build your business preparing for what would be the best way to sell my business too, not just I want to sell my business someday. This isn't
Absolutely. That's what this GPS exit model is all about. So when you're figuring out who the buyers are, then you want to figure out what's that buyer's criteria.
right.
What type of synergies do those buyers look for? And where do the financials have to be? If you're trying to sell a $20 million company, where does the gross revenues need to be? Where's the gross profit margins? Where does the EBITDA need to be? The EBITDA is going to have to be somewhere around, between $3 to $5 million, right?
Mhm.
So you'll know what those synergies are. Now you're probably asking, well, how will I know? Well, call somebody like me. I can tell you what synergies they're looking for, and I'll tell you what synergies they're buying because I
You
know
post every
we
day.
have over 28,000 buyers. Yeah. And so the fourth type of buyer, just so I remember to tell you all the types of buyers, is a serial entrepreneurial, sophisticated buyer. Now, a serial entrepreneur is industry agnostic, they're EBITDA specific, they're
Yeah,
chasing cash flow. Okay.
yeah,
So I have serial entrepreneurs I work with, and every week they're like, "What do you have new? What do you have new? What do you have new?" And they'll give me offers almost every single business, but they have their certain buying criteria,
yeah,
and sometimes it fits and sometimes it doesn't.
right.
And then the last type of buyer is a turnaround specialist, and turnaround specialists buy distressed assets. So they're not going to buy your $20 million company. So once you determine, who the buyers are, then you can determine, okay, where's my numbers? Where's my financials need to be? And what type of synergies do I have to build when I'm building my foundation in order to maximize value when I go to sell?
Exactly. Yep. Very, very well said. So you touched on it, but let's talk about the six P's.
Mhm.
You that's your model for selling and planning your exit at huge profits.
Yeah.
So walk us through those if you could.
Sure. And a couple of them I've already mentioned, but I will definitely walk you through these because this is a way that I evaluate businesses. Now we'll get evaluations later, but I use different types of methods. But one of the biggest methods I use is my own method, which is called the six P's.
Yeah, and for all
And
the Action Coach clients on here, you'll find that this fits directly into all the same systems and all the stuff that we're teaching you guys on. So listen up. This will fit really well for you.
so the number one P is people.
Yep.
You don't build a business, you build people, and people build the business. Okay. So this goes back to us talking about that dentist practice or that chiropractic practice or that interior decorators practice, right? You have to build a business with people. The business can't be tied to you. So, number one, a lot of times companies will have the right people, Craig, but they have the right people in the wrong seats. So,
Mhm.
you really need to test their core competencies and make sure you have the right people in the right seats. If not, you're not going to be efficient, you're not going to be productive, and you're going to have tremendous turnover. And then, Craig, you have to ask the who question. Who opens the door? Who handles customers? Who handles customer service issues? Who handles logistics, manufacturing, distribution, environmental, social media, marketing? Who handles IT? Who handles breaches? Who handles environmental? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But here's the clue, Craig. You should never be next to the who.
In fact, for our clients who know the cycle of business that we teach you guys, you as the owner, your job is really just three things. You got to be the keeper of the gate of the culture of your organization. You got to be the keeper of the gate of the vision of your organization. And then you got to make sure you're creating an environment for your team to thrive by providing
Mm.
them resources or a training, that kind of stuff. But other than that, unless you're a really small business and you're just in it now, but that should be your goal to get to that level.
That's your goal, right?
Your name, if you're going to finish your business, you've got to get to the point where all you're doing is serving that team by casting that vision, managing and maintaining the culture, and creating the environment for that team to thrive. Team will take
Right.
care of your customers and take care of the business, which takes care of you. So yeah, go on, Michelle.
All right. So people is obviously very important. You have to have the right people in the right seat. You have to ask the who question, never put your name next to the who, and make sure you have that layer of management, because one thing that buyers look for, especially when they're buying a business, over $10 million, they want to make sure you have layer of managements in place. Like we're selling a company right now for $12 million. They have no management. I mean, they have the owner and employees, no team leaders, no management.
Yeah.
It's amazing that they've gotten that this far. So you want to make sure you have your chief operating officer in place, you have your CFO in place, and just make sure you have that management team. So that's number one. That's very, very, very important, because again, buyers want to buy a business, not a job. And if the owner is involved in the business, then it will require that owner to stay for a transition. I mean, we're selling a $60 million company right now, and the owner's going to have to stay on for 2 to 3 years. They do have a management team, but this owner is really tied to the customers,
Yeah.
really tied to the clients,
In fact,
because they have,
yeah, I was just going to say, in fact, in my acquisition days, one of the companies we bought was probably 80 million a year in revenue, something along those lines. And so he got a decent multiple, but the owner was required to be there because some of the key
Mhm.
staff were so tied to him and some of the key accounts were so tied to him that
Yeah,
we knew there was too much risk, because he was almost like a key,
right.
sales, guy, and a key operational leadership guy still, even though he had an executive staff in name. Um, but he couldn't just walk away without us having a big risk. So we gave him a 3-year contract to stay with us, and he got
Right.
some stock, and he got a balloon at the end, and he got a nice salary in the middle. But his job was to protect his balloon on the backside
Hmm. Hmm.
by not losing business. And it was tough for him because we as a new company had a different direction. And
Right.
we got rid of some of the key employees that got him through some of the lean years, and he just wanted to take care of them, and they just didn't fit us and our culture and our organization anymore. There were some key SKUs that his business sold that were like
Hmm.
pet project type SKUs and things like that, and we're like, it's not profitable, gone. And so he's like kind of frustrated because here he sold his business, but he's now an employee of ours, and we're not running the business the same way that he
Yeah.
went. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is difficult. I mean, there are, there's a lot of transactions where, and we can talk about that later, but there's a lot of transactions where buyers will buy a percentage of the business.
Mhm.
And that's pretty common right now. It's been common for the last several years, where they'll buy 70%, 80%, and the owner will, retain their salary, all their benefits, plus they'll have 20, 30, 40% of the company. And, it really depends upon the owner. That's why when we go to sell businesses, we take our clients through what we call the seller sanity check,
Okay.
because some owners want to stay on. I've had owners say,
Right.
I don't want to leave yet. I want to sell, but I like to stay on for another 2 and 3 or 4 or 5 years and help grow my company. I mean, it's agriculture business. He says, look, I've grown it as far as I can. And he's doing probably 70, 80 million in revenues. He says, I've grown it as far as I can. I want to stay on for the new owner and see them grow my legacy even further and help them do it. So it really depends upon what the owner does, but we do take our owners through what we call the seller sanity check.
That's awesome.
Um, but back to the P. So we got people, and the second P is product. Okay. So product is really your industry, Craig. And you have to ask yourself, is my product, my industry on the way up or on the way out? Is it thriving or dying? Do I have an Amazon or do I have a Blockbuster? If you have an Amazon, great. If you have a Blockbuster, you need to you need to pivot. You need to align yourself with a mentor like Action Coach. You need to hire the experts because when you're in your fog, it's foggy. And you need to ask yourself some transformational questions. I always tell my clients, ask yourself these three questions. Number one, what business are you in? Number two, what business should you be in? And I'm sorry, number one, what business are you in? Number two, what do you do really, really, really well? And number three, what business should you be in? Those three questions are transformational. A lot of times, us as entrepreneurs and business owners, we become transactional and we
Right.
stop being transformational. So, Amazon did this. Amazon asked themselves, what business are we in? Oh, we're in the book selling business. Then they asked themselves, what do we do really, really, really well, better than anybody else? We do fulfillment better than anybody else. So, what business should we be in? We should be in the fulfillment business, is what Amazon said. Those three transformational questions transformed Amazon into a small bookseller to the multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, worldwide conglomerate that they are today. So, just because you're in an industry that's dying, and there's a lot of industries that are dying right now because of COVID, doesn't mean you're out of business. It
Right.
just means you got to pivot. You got to ask better questions, transformational questions, and align yourself, like I said, with action coach, with the mentors, with somebody who can help you. Because when you're in the middle of chaos, it's chaotic, right? It's hard to read the label from the inside of the bottle. You need an outsider's perspective to help you read the warning signs and keep you out of the danger zone.
Exactly. So what's the next P?
So then processes. Processes are really big and typically overlooked by a lot of business owners. A lot of business owners don't even think about process until something bad happens. So if somebody gets hurt in the manufacturing plant, oh no, we need a health and safety process for that. We
Mhm.
have a client complain, and it's all over the internet. We need a client customer satisfaction process for that. So processes should really be designed from the beginning, and
Yeah.
processes should be designed with the customer experience in mind. Have you watched the movie The Founder based upon the McDonald's story? The McDonald's? Okay.
I
So you
hope
remember
everybody on the call has. If
it's
you
the best movie ever.
go see it, yeah, it's awesome. The
Yeah.
Founder. It's about Ray Kroc.
Right. Well, it's about both. It's about the McDonald brothers who started McDonald's. Then Ray Kroc came in and blew it up, because if it wasn't for Ray Kroc, there would be no McDonald's
So,
today.
so speaking of, what kind of buyer was Ray Kroc?
So what kind of buyer was Ray Kroc? Well, Ray didn't buy that business. Ray did not buy that business. Ray came in, worked with them, tried convinced them to franchise. Remember? Convinced them to franchise. They didn't want to do it. He finally got them to sign a franchise agreement, and they were fighting him every step of the way, and they wouldn't let him grow the business. And those three transformational questions that I just told you about, that happened to Ray. Remember when Ray Kroc was in the bank trying to borrow money because the franchisees were not compliant? They weren't paying. He was upside down. He's getting very little royalties from McDonald's. He had already taken out a loan against his house. So he was about to lose his house and he was trying to borrow more money. Do you remember this scene? And
Yeah.
then when he walked out of the bank, this gentleman followed him out and said, "Hey, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Can I ask you a question?" And he goes, "Sure." He goes, "What business are you in?" And Ray goes, "I'm in the restaurant business." And he goes, "No, what business are you in?" And Ray goes, "I'm in the restaurant business." And he said, "What business should you be in?" And Ray's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he goes, "You need to be in the real estate business. You need to be the one buying the land, building the buildings, leasing them to the franchisees. You start a separate corporation, separate from McDonald's. You start this corporation, you build the buildings, you lease them to the franchisees. When the franchisees are not compliant, you void the agreement, and now you can put another franchisee in there."
Right.
Those questions right there is what caused Ray to catapult this business and be the number one real estate holder in the world. McDonald's is still the number one real estate holder in the world. And think about that. If somebody didn't ask him that question, an outsider, if somebody didn't ask him that question, he probably would have been out of business and McDonald's would have never grew to what it is today.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And,
Yeah.
and
It's amazing, right?
yeah, and he monetizes his real estate deal by selling them a business model of selling hamburgers.
Yeah.
and the lease is baked in, and they're going to make money. He makes money. He's got all the assets.
And that's how he was able to negotiate with McDonald's to let him take over everything, because all the franchisees had signed leases with his separate corporation. Yeah, but back to processes. So processes. So back in the 40s, McDonald's started the restaurant business, right? Well, McDonald's said, look, we want to build a restaurant, because back in the 40s, you had the drive up, we had waiters and waitresses on roller skates.
Yeah.
The problem with that concept back then is the food was always cold. The order took so long. It was always wrong, and it wasn't efficient. So McDonald's says, we're going to build a fast food restaurant, and this is our mission. This is our vision. This is our customer experience.
Yeah.
Our customers are going to get great tasting food, hot and fast, with under 2 minutes or less. How are we going to do that? So they took all their employees to an empty tennis court. They started mapping it all out, if you remember correctly. And then they kept changing it. So for an entire day, they were in an empty tennis court mapping out who takes the order, who toasts the buns, who cooks a burger, who puts the pickles on the bun, who gives it to the client in 2 minutes or less. Those processes were designed with the customer experience in mind. And that's why you can eat at a McDonald's anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, USA, and get the same experience. So many business owners, though, don't design the process with the customer experience in mind. A lot of processes alienate us as consumers. So you really need to design your processes with the customer experience in mind, make sure they're efficient, productive, and most importantly, and I know Action Coach does this, is make sure you have policy and procedure manuals. Make sure you have those SOP checklists, because when you go to sell your business, what do you think is the number one thing that the buyer is going to inspect? They're going to inspect your policy and procedure manuals.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So when you're selling businesses, you're seeing the buyers go inspect the policy and procedure manuals, the SOPs.
Before I even go to due diligence, before I even put the business on the market, I ask my clients, let me see your policy and procedure manuals, because I know what's going to happen. I've been doing this 20 years, thousands of transactions. I know it's going to happen. So I look at the PP manuals, like the company that we're selling for $68 million doesn't really have hardly any. So I said, look, guys, we got to get our policy and procedure manuals together. We got to get our SOPs. We got to get our non-competes. We got to get all this documentation that a buyer is going to want when they purchase the business.
Because the buyer wants to know it's going to continue as is, and
right.
even more value going forward. They don't want to take the risk that it potentially goes down when that knowledge base of that owner walks away.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of situations, Craig, where a business owner has everything in their head. I'm dealing with one right now. It's a fabrication company. They have everything in their head, the two partners. And I'm like, we need to get this stuff out of your head. If I could just plant a chip in your head and take it all out, I would. But we need to get all this stuff out of your head onto paper, because buyers are not going to buy the business, because they're concerned that they're not going to be able to run the business the way you've ran it.
Exactly.
And they don't have the knowledge that you have.
Exactly. And everything should be a system.
Everything should be a system.
Everything in the business.
Yeah. You call it system, I call it processes. Same thing.
Exactly. Same thing. So everything should be a process. We should have a process for how we recruit new employees, how we onboard them, how we train them, how we manage them, how we hold them accountable. We should have processes for how we do our financials, how we report on those, how we make decisions. So think of processes for everything. If it takes you as the owner to do it, if it's all in your head, then it's not a process. Yeah. So get with your coaches, work on getting processes, because if that's one of the number one things that every buyer looks for, plus it's the way to scale your business. You can't scale with great processes.
You cannot create a sustainable, scalable business without great processes. And you really have a hard time being very profitable without having great processes, because if your processes are not efficient and productive, you're going to have waste, right? And you're not going to be as profitable.
Exactly.
So the fourth P, if you're ready for the fourth one, and this is probably the most exciting one to, I would say, most of your clients, because it is the highest value driver. So we're all looking at those multiples, right? Multiple of EBITDA. And the highest value driver is in proprietary. There are 6 pillars to proprietary. I'll run through them quickly. So number 1 is branding. The more well-branded you are, the more I can sell your business for. As long as your brand is still relevant in the mind of the consumers.
Okay.
Meaning, are you going to pay anything for Blockbuster?
Today, no.
No,
Oh,
because they went bust.
yep.
So a lot of companies will come to me and say, well, Michelle, I got this huge brand. Well, you don't really have this huge brand anymore because your industry has become obsolete and you
Right.
didn't do anything to pivot.
Yeah.
So you got to really make sure your brand is still relevant in the mind of consumers. But branding is huge. I mean, the number one brand in the world is, do you know who the number one brand in the world is?
The number one brand in the world.
Yep.
I
The
would.
most valuable brand in the world.
Oh, that's right now.
Yeah.
Oh, Amazon, isn't it?
Apple.
Yeah.
Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apple's worth $189 billion for just the brand. That's just a brand.
That's just
That's
a
not,
portion.
that's not inventory, real estate, cash flow,
Doesn't include all the
anything.
rest of it. Just
That
the
doesn't include anything, just the brand. So brand your company name. The more well branded you are, the more money I can get you for your business. And then the other real important thing in proprietary is trademarks. Trademarks are huge. But here's the problem with a lot of businesses in the United States is that a business will start and they'll go out and get a federal trade. I mean, they'll go out and get a local trademark, right? They'll go get registered in Texas, whatever state they do business in, but they never check the federal database to make sure that name is available.
Gotcha. Yeah,
So
because
they've never protected their
yeah,
company name. So they could be in business 10, 15, 20 years and all of a sudden receive a letter in the mail that says you have to stop using that company name, a cease and desist letter. And you can throw lots of money at it. You can hire an attorney, but you will probably end up having to stop using that name.
wow.
So the first thing I do when I meet with my owners, I always ask them, do you have a trademark on your company name? Oh yeah, I'm trademarked with the state of Texas or the state of California. No. Do you have a federal trademark?
So they're getting them federally.
You got it. Yes, get a federal trademark because here's the deal. You could spend 15 years building your brand and all of a sudden you got to start all over.
Right, because somebody else has been building their brand all over the country.
Right. Or
They
somebody,
muscle financially. Yep.
right. So it's not that expensive. It's between $1,500 to $2,000 to get a federal trademark. And don't just get a trademark on your company name. Brand everything that's unique to you, your unique selling proposition, your USP. Like I've registered Exit Rich. I have a federal trademark on the ST GPS exit model and the ST6Ps and Exit Rich and everything else because I don't want to start building brands and then have to stop because I didn't, do my extra due diligence to make sure I could get that federal trademark. If you have a podcast, brand the name of your podcast. I mean, not brand the name, but get a federal trademark. Okay, so trademarks are very, very important. Also, product. If you have something unique, get it patent. I know so many people say, well, if you get a patent, then you gotta, you gotta disclose everything.
What I'm doing, yeah.
But so what? Have you ever watched Shark Tank?
Yep, they're always
What
asking.
do they always ask? Do you have a patent on this? Do you have a patent on this? Do you have a utility patent? Is your patent
And have you
pending?
sold it? Have you ever, for sales?
Right. So patents are huge. I mean, we sold a business for $18 million. I had 18 patents. They weren't making any money, but we sold the patents for $1 million a piece.
Right.
So get patents. The other thing that's very, very valuable and will cause a higher multiple is contracts.
Yep.
Contracts. Buyers love contracts. So contracts with manufacturers, contracts with distributors, any type of exclusive contracts are really valuable. Franchisors. So if you're a franchisor and you have, 50 franchisees, that is extremely valuable. The most valuable contracts of all are the contracts with your clients.
Right.
So one of the businesses we're selling has 160 contracts. Here's a caveat to contracts. 99% of all sales, 99.9% of all sales are asset sales, not stock sales. 100% of business owners do not put the transferability clause in their contracts. And if some business owners have that transferability clause that's on this call, I applaud you because most of the time they don't.
Just give a brief description of what that is if somebody doesn't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So I'll do even better than that. I'll send it to you and you can send it out to everybody that's on this call today. But it basically says that this contract is transferable to the new entity.
Yes.
upon sale or upon this or upon that. Like it's just a simple 2-sentence clause that I got from my attorney. Because one of the big things I do, and I know Action Coach can do this too, is I work with my clients to make sure those contracts are transferable, because if they're not, they're going to find out in due diligence and the deal is going to stop. The
Right.
only way that deal will continue is if the buyer decides to change from an asset sale to a stock sale, or if we can go to your clients and get a transfer agreement signed. Now, some clients will do that, a lot won't, but if you have 160, 300, 400, 500 clients, that's a lot. You can't do that at the end. You want to do all that stuff in the beginning.
Right.
So make sure you have that transferability clause.
Have that, I'm assuming, Michelle, makes sense to have that transferability clause on both the supply side,
Yeah.
so that you're protected from the suppliers that are serving your
Yeah.
business, as well as on your customer side of the fence.
Yeah. There was a franchisor, I'm not going to say the name, and I didn't handle the sale, but there was a franchisor that sold and had about 150 franchisees. It wasn't a big company, but they sold for a pretty penny. They sold for millions, and the buyers didn't do their due diligence. None of those franchise agreements were transferable. None of the franchisees
Yeah.
transferred over to the new owner, except for maybe 2. They ended up having to file bankruptcy. So
Wow.
the buyer ended up going out of business, filing bankruptcy, and losing everything. So I can't stress this enough.
Yeah.
Make sure your agreements, and if you're acquiring businesses, you want to also make sure that all of those contracts, vendor contracts, all your supplier contracts, manufacturing contracts, franchisee contracts, client contracts have that transferability in the clause. It's one of the number one deal breakers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So what are the last couple P's?
So, I got to finish IP. I got to finish in proprietary.
Oh yeah.
So the other valuable thing in proprietary is databases. Database. Now, you could be losing money and still sell your company for millions, believe it or not. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp. $19 billion.
Wow.
WhatsApp was hemorrhaging money. They were hemorrhaging. But Facebook had 1 billion users, and WhatsApp had 1 billion users, and Facebook knew that they could monetize and they could ROI on that. So
Right.
build your database. If your database can be repurposed and retargeted, that's very valuable to clients. Okay. And
Right.
then the other valuable thing in proprietary, I just want to talk about real quick, is IP real estate. This is not the real estate that your office is in, or your commercial building or land or anything like that. IP real estate is this. Let's say that you have a skincare product and you're on Oprah's favorite things, and Oprah Winfrey is endorsing your skincare products. That is huge, huge. Let's say that you have diet supplements and you have a celebrity endorsing your diet supplements. They can only endorse one diet supplement at a time, or one skincare product at a time. Or let's say you're manufacturing bedding and you're number one on Wayfair. This is what we call intellectual real estate that strategics and competitors will pay a lot of money for. Does that make sense?
Yep. Exactly. That makes all the sense in the world. Yeah.
All right. And then so that's why you can see now the proprietary can take you from a 3 multiple to a 10 multiple very quickly.
That's a
Okay.
giant difference too. If explain multiple very quickly, because a lot of people don't necessarily talk in those words all the time. But
Okay. So, I was going to do that in
okay,
evaluations.
perfect. Let's do that.
Okay.
Yep.
So the 5th P is patrons. Patrons is your customer base. And a lot of businesses follow the 80-20 rule, where 80% of their revenues comes from 20% of the clients.
Yeah.
But if you lose a few clients, you could practically put you out of business. So the number one thing that buyers look for is they look for customer diversification, not customer concentration.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you have diversified customers. I sold a business. It was appraised for $9.8 million. We sold it for $15 million. They had 65% of their revenue tied up with the BP contract. Now, that scares most buyers.
Right.
I had a buyer that offered us, I had 12 LOIs. I had a buyer that offered us $15 million for 70% of the company, and the owner retains the rest because he outbidded everybody else because he wanted to buy that BP contract. So sometimes it can work in your favor. And the reason he wanted to buy that contract is because he has similar products and services. And those products and services were really, he'd been trying to get into BP for years and years and years and could never get in. Now he knew he could, and he could get those products and services in BP now if he bought this company. Make sense?
Makes a ton of sense. And
All
so for
right.
all of you who are considering acquiring businesses, not just positioning your own business for sale someday, this is the kind of stuff you should be thinking about as well.
Absolutely. So the last P, the P that everybody, is in business for, is to make money. So the last P is profits, right? We all want to make profits. But I will tell you, profits, the reason I put it last is because profits is never the problem. It's always a symptom. And clients come to me all the time and say, Michelle, I have a profit problem. I'm like, no, you have a people problem. Or, I have a profit problem. No, you have an IP problem because you didn't protect your IP, or you have a process issue and you have too much waste. So profit is never the problem. It's always the symptom of not operating on one of the other 5 Ps. Does that make sense?
It's all sense in the world. If you have the wrong people, it'll show up in profits. If you don't have good processes, it'll show up in profits at the end of the day. If you don't have a clear path to where you're headed, it'll show up in profits.
Right.
Yep,
So there
absolutely.
we are. So there's my 6 Ps.
Yeah. So could you walk us through how a business is evaluated from the buyer's perspective? Since this is about positioning your own business to sell it, you want to know how the other side is thinking.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it from the buyer's perspective, because from the seller's perspective, a lot of sellers will come to me and say, Michelle, I want $10 million for my business. Okay, great. Let's see what your business is valued at. And they have maybe $100,000 in EBITDA. Well, nobody's going to pay them 10 million for 100,000 unless they've got some of that proprietary assets I was talking about, right? But in most cases, they won't. So here's what buyers look at. So first and foremost, though, in evaluating businesses, we have to do what I call normalizing the financials. Okay. A lot of business owners, when I ask them, what do you make? They can tell me their top line, but they can never tell me their bottom line. So we got to first and foremost normalize the financials so we get to the true EBITDA, or the true seller's discretionary earnings. So normalizing the financials means we put them into a spreadsheet, and then we want to add back. So EBITDA is adding back depreciation, amortization, interest, and taxes. But we also want to add back non-business expenses. So any of those personal expenses that are not necessary to run your business, like let's say your car, let's say that business trip that maybe really wasn't a business trip. Anything that's not a necessary business expense needs to be added back so we can get to the true adjusted EBITDA. Plus non-reoccurring we have to add back. So think about this. Let's say there was a hurricane and you had to spend $50,000 to replace your roof because the insurance didn't cover it. Well, that $50,000 is non-reoccurring, and we would add that back. Let's say you just spent 20 grand on an AC unit, non-recurring, add that back. Right. So we always normalize the financials, because if we don't do that, the buyer's not going to do that. The buyer wants the EBITDA to be, they want the EBITDA to be high, but they also want it to be low so they can pay less. Yeah. So we have to normalize those financials to find out what the business is truly making. Okay. Yeah. And then, from a buyer, so when I look at evaluating businesses, I take into consideration a seller sanity check and a buyer sanity check. So we base a business on several different valuations. We look at industry, discounted cash flow, asset approach, industry approach, market approach, and the 6P approach, which I call the synergy approach. And a lot of times we'll go to market without a price on the business, because if we have a manufacturing business and that manufacturing business has $2 million in EBITDA, we know we're going to have at least 300, 400, 500, 600 buyers. We know we'll probably bring 5, 6, 7, 8 LOIs. So we're going to go to market without the price, because we don't want to tell them what they should pay. We want to hear what they're going to pay us. Right.
So but bidding wars even.
What's that?
We can create bidding wars.
And create bidding wars, right? So if we set the price, we're kind of the ones setting the price and saying what the bidding war should be. We don't want to do that. Right. So the way that buyers evaluate the business is buyers are going to look at, buyers look at what's best for them. So if 2020 is a terrible year, they want to look at 2020. But of course, we're going to make them look at a 3 to 4 or 5 year average. Right. If 2020 is a great year, well, that could be conceived as an anomaly, right? And not sustainable. So then they're going to look at projections. So we make sure that we always base our range on evaluation on a 3 to 5 year average, plus a 5-year projections going forward. Plus, we always get our businesses lender pre-qualified first to see what a bank will lend on it, because that's a good indication that if a bank's going to give $20 million, then probably going to get $20 million out of it, right?
That's cool.
And so buyers look at, how long has it been? Buyers look at the 6 Ps. How long has the business been in business? Number one thing they want to know is, why is the seller selling? If it's a great business, why is the seller selling? So we always want to have the story of why the seller is selling, which is why we always help our sellers through that seller sanity check.
Yep.
And then they want to know, about the people in the business. They want to do a deep dive to really understand the team and the talent, the longevity, and is that talent and team going to stay? And they're going to do a very deep dive in the industry to make sure the industry is sustainable. And then they're going to look at culture. We talked about culture earlier. They're going to look at culture when they look at people, and will it fit into their current culture? They're also going to look at, they'll look at the processes like we already talked about. They're going to do a deep dive into financials, a very deep dive. Yeah. They're going to look at every single thing. So whatever we add back, we have to prove. Right. So I tell my clients, don't give me add backs that you can't prove. Make sure you have the receipts, make sure you have the bank statements. And it's one thing I can tell business owners is start tracking that stuff now, because one of the biggest problems we have when we're doing evaluations is sellers will say, "Oh, I run all kinds of things through my business. You should know what that is, Michelle." Well, I have no idea what you run through your business. Well, they say the CPA should know. Well, you know what? I call the CPA, and CPA goes, "Really, Michelle? Even if I didn't know, I won't tell you." I don't want to know. Right. So business owners really need to keep a log of all the stuff that they run through the business and all their non-recurring. Okay. So then the buyer's going to look at, they're going to do a deep dive into numbers and make sure that it's sustainable. They're going to do a deep dive to see if they agree with the add backs. They don't always agree, and when we look at add backs, there's a lot of things that go into it, because let's say the owner, husband and wife, are paying themselves $500,000 a year, 250 to the husband, 250 to the wife. Let's say the wife does a bookkeeping.
Right. Exactly.
Well, we can hire a bookkeeper for maybe 35, 40, 50 grand, right? And we'll add back 200. Yeah. So you can't just say you're going to add back the whole thing. Same thing with rent. If they own the real estate, they might own the real estate in a separate corporation. They pay themselves $1 million a year. We're not going to charge $1 million in rent a year. You might only charge, $500,000. So we'll add back the $500,000. So there's a lot of things that go into normalizing the financials. But buyers are also going to look at, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They want to know all the skeletons that are in your closet. So we want to tell those stories up front. Any lawsuits, any workers' comp issues, what's the mod score? I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So we try to work with our clients to make sure that we know everything up front, so there are no skeletons that jump out later.
That makes so much sense. And on the skeleton side, do you position those right up front with the potential buyer?
I do. Because if you don't position them up front, they're going to find them anyway. They will find them anyway. Their team will find them, because in due diligence, they're going to have a team of attorneys. They're going to have a team of forensic auditors. They're going to find them. You're better saying the truth, telling it up front, because in that way, you're not trying to hide anything.
Right. And then you own the narrative too, versus them making up the narrative in their own mind.
Absolutely. And they know if you tell them up front that you're being transparent and you're not trying to hide something just to sell the business.
Exactly. So tell us a story about one of the bidding wars you were able to help a client.
Well, I told you about one with the BP contract, right? I told you about that one, right? Yep. So there was another manufacturing business that we sold, and it's actually sold to sophisticated, surprisingly. I thought for sure one of the strategics, our competitors, were going to buy them. The PEGs would not buy them. And the reason the PEGs would not buy them is because the owner was too involved with the customer relationships throughout the world. So the owner would travel to Dubai, travel here, travel there. And the owner is the one that had the close-knit relationships. Right. PEGs will not buy businesses if they feel that that business is 1,000% dependent upon that owner.
Okay.
So, but a serial entrepreneur bought that business, and they really, really wanted it. And we had a couple of strategics, we had a couple of competitors, but they ended up paying. The business was appraised in the $8.89 million range. They ended up outbidding everybody else because they wanted They were buying some other companies similar to it, and they wanted the patents that this business had. So they paid $15 million for a business that was praised right under 9 million. Plus, they bought the client's other company that was headed into foreclosure.
Wow.
So the company had a second company that they put their son to run, and his son was running it into the ground. Plus, the CPA was embezzling money, the on-site CPA,
Wow.
and so they ended up buying that company for another 3 million.
Wow. They really wanted that first company, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So Michelle, we've got some questions coming in. So before we get into the audience Q&A, let's say one of the business owners that's watching this today is on the webinar here today with us, needs an M&A advisor. What should they be looking for to select the right M&A advisor for them?
So that's a good question. You really gotta make sure you get an M&A advisor, not a business broker. There is a difference.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure they have the credentials. You want to make sure that they have years and years of experience in all verticals. And the reason I say all verticals is because, I mean, there are some M&A advisors that specify in just one vertical. Um, but then if you hire that one M&A advisor that specifies in just one industry, you're missing out on all the other serial entrepreneurs that are chasing EBITDA. You follow me? Because they're not going to have those buyers. Those buyers are not going to go to them.
Right.
So you need to make sure that they have experience in many different verticals. You need to ask them how many deals they've sold, how many businesses they've sold. You want to make sure that they have a database of thousands upon thousands of buyers, and not just buyers, but the different types of buyers. Ask them if they even know the different types of buyers. You'd be surprised how many M&A advisors don't even know the different types of buyers. Ask them how they value businesses.
Mm.
How do they value synergies? How do they value a database? How do they value patents? How do they value your brand? How do they come up with a value for that? If you're dealing with an M&A advisor, you want to know if they don't own the firm, then who determines the budget, the advertising budget for that business? If it's not the owner, does the agent determine that? Which I will tell you, in most cases they don't. It's typically the owner. And then you want to make sure that they have a good support team,
Right.
And you want to ask them if they have any experience creating bidding wars.
Yeah, excellent question. So bottom line, everybody, you don't want to just go pick anybody who happens to sell businesses. This is going to be probably one of the biggest financial transactions of your entire life if you set up your business properly, and it's going to fund your future legacy. So you want the best advisor on your team possible.
Yeah. And let me make another point too.
Yeah.
Be very careful with this because I see a lot of business owners getting burned by this. There are several companies out there that charge hefty retainer fees, $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 to just evaluate the business, put the book together. They call it the retainer fee, and then they never sell the business. 3 of these companies have called me in the last year to ask me if my company could be the ones that actually go out there and close the deal because they can't close the deals.
Isn't that interesting?
So we don't charge any retainer fees. A lot of M&A advisors do. I'm a Mergers and Acquisitions Master Intermediary, Senior Business Analyst, and a bunch of other stuff. I have never charged a retainer fee. And the reason for that is because I am a closer. I'm a results-driven person. But a lot of business owners pay hefty retainer fees and they get nothing for it. So if you have to pay, if you're going to pay a retainer fee, make sure you get it in writing exactly what they're going to do for you. Because I will tell you, many of the times they're just charging a retainer fee and they're never going to sell your business.
Right. That makes so much sense. So, so let's dive into some of the Q&A from the audience. So
Sure.
their questions, and then Michelle's got a special offer for anybody that's on here today. We'll let her explain all of that about her book. You'd be absolutely crazy not to get it. I would definitely get that, especially with all the extra stuff she's throwing in for as cheap as her book is. And the value you're going to get from it, it's tremendous. But first question, Wynn asks, there are different valuation levels. So for the annual valuation, which makes sense to get, how do you know which level of valuation to get or what kind of cost to spend on an evaluation? So if you could talk to that, that'd be great.
Well, when you're saying there's different valuation levels, I think what you're referring to is there's different types of evaluations if you're going to go to court for estate planning, if different valuations, if there's a partner dispute and a partner's wanting to be bought out, etc. We do M&A advisors do what we call brokers of opinion. It's a valuation based upon broker's opinion. It's not a valuation that we're going to go to court on. Now there are valuations that you can get for that, but those are more expensive and not necessary, unless you're going to court for divorce, unless there's a estate planning a dispute in the business and a partner is trying to be bought out, or there's a pending or bankruptcy coming up. There's really not a need for that. What you really need is just to find an M&A advisor that you're comfortable with, that
Yep.
you can work with to get an evaluation done once a year of what your business will sell for.
Excellent. Drew asked, can you share any specific advice or challenges regarding selling your business to a client in a B2B manufacturing business?
So, yes, there's always a slippery slope when you try to sell to a client, an employee, a competitor. So, the biggest advice that I would give when you try to sell to a client is hire an expert, hire an M&A advisor or an M&A attorney, preferably an advisor because they're more deal makers and deal breakers. A lot of M&A attorneys, you got to make sure you find the right M&A attorney. So I would hire an M&A advisor based upon that one client and let them work with that client, because you want to make sure that you sign the proper disclosures. A lot of business owners will divulge information to clients or employees and then never have them sign NDAs. So you want to make sure you get an NDA signed. You want to make sure that you qualify that client, that client can actually afford to buy you before you divulge any proprietary information. And this is better handled by an M&A advisor, so you still maintain a good relationship with your client, and it's your expert that's handling everything. So if it goes south or anything, the relationship can still be good between the two of you.
Gotcha. And is there any information, let's say you get the NDAs and all that kind of stuff, is there any specific information you would be reluctant to share with a
Absolutely. So this is why you
so
need an
here's some
M&A.
examples of that.
This is why you need an M&A advisor, because most business owners don't know what to give and what not to give. And you really need an M&A advisor who understands and can control the process. And if we're going to give something, then we want to get a little bit of something.
Right.
So we don't want to give, proprietary information. Like, I would be very skeptical to give a client my financials.
Right.
I would never give a client my client list. Okay. So you got to be very careful about that pertinent stuff. So you got to handle this buyer with kid gloves. First, you got to qualify them before you give them any information and non-disclose them. Then you got to start asking them questions, and then you give them a little bit of stuff. But before it starts getting serious, then you're going to want some type of LOI in place. We're going to want some escrow money that's non-refundable. We want to make sure they're serious. We want to maybe even have a non-compete in place that if the deal goes south. But you got to be very careful, because if this is a big client, let's say it's a client that you have 50, 60, 70% of your income in, you could lose that client. So in some cases, it might not even be worth it trying to sell it to a client. You really have to know this client, what their intentions are, and are they snooping or are they serious? But
Right.
it's a slippery slope, and you need to have an advisor handle it for you.
If it's a really large client, let's say it's a much larger business than the supplier that's trying to sell to the client, are there any unique specific or things to be aware of in that situation where the client has a lot of financial muscle behind them?
Yeah. So again, I would make sure that I have an M&A attorney involved, an M&A advisor involved, before I disclose anything proprietary. So what type of non-compete I could get and non-circumvent, to make sure that they're not just, because a lot of times clients and competitors are just trying to see what they can get. But you really got to know, is this a real buyer? Like, it's hard. I'm happy for this gentleman to call me directly, and I can ask him some questions and get a better idea of if this is a real buyer or not.
That would be perfect. You ought to definitely get a hold of Michelle. After this, we'll make sure the contact details and all that kind of stuff are shared.
Yeah.
And
Because it's a slippery slope, and it can work, but look, it's even selling to competitors. Our agriculture company right now, first thing we do is every time we get another agriculture company in that space, we send our clients an email. We have our clients approve it in writing that they're okay with us disclosing information to that particular competitor. And a lot of times, more than anything, the business owners have a good idea who, if the competitor or the client is a serious buyer or if they're just snooping for information.
yep, that makes so much sense, Michelle. But yeah, go cautiously for sure, and be very
Yeah, but don't do it yourself. It's like if you need heart surgery, you're going to cut your chest open and pull out your heart. No, make sure you get an advisor to protect your assets.
exactly. And so Brian asks, how far in advance of an anticipated sell or exit should a small business be consciously working to ready the business for sale? And I'll go ahead and answer it from my perspective, but
Well, we're going to have the same answer.
start to be thinking that way because it might happen. But I'll let you elaborate.
So Brian, is it?
Yes.
Okay. So Brian, I always say from day one, of starting or buying a business, you should plan your business with the end in mind. You should follow that GPS exit model, because even if you don't sell your business, at least you'll have a profitable business. At least you have a sustainable business and a scalable business. The reason these businesses don't sell, one of the biggest reasons, is they'll come to me and say, Michelle, I need $10 million. That's how I value my business. I go, well, how'd you come up with that? Well, that's what I need to retire on. Or that's what I need to put 5 girls through college or pay for 5 girls' weddings, And the buyer doesn't care what you need. The buyer cares what the value is. So you need to start building that value from day one of starting your business. So when you're ready, you will get that price tag that you need to enter the next phase of your life, whether it's retirement, paying off debt, whatever it is.
That's such a good point, Michelle. And at the end of the day, if your business is worth a lot more money, even though it's years down the road before you're going to sell, you can
Thanks, Brian.
you can still
I just read his comment.
you can still capitalize on that, because you can go,
Right.
it's worth X, and you want to go do something, you could take out an SBA loan or anything else just to access capital against your business, because it's more than cash flowing. So
Right.
just gives you so many options financially.
We just all need to really be conscious and really focus on the big picture. So many business owners think that they're going to transfer their business to their kids.
Right.
Well, the kids don't want your business anymore. I'm sorry. Back in the day, it used to be business was passed from generation to generation to generation. Well, nowadays, children want to go out and create their own masterpiece. They don't want to take over their family's business. So you really, from day one, think about it. If you think about this, who has children? Does everybody on here have children?
I would imagine most people do, yeah.
Do we not plan out everything for our children's life? From where they go to preschool, elementary,
Yeah.
grade school, high school, college, how many grandkids they're going to give us, who they're going to marry, where they're going to live, right? If we have an estate, we do estate planning. We have a will. We make sure we have a will. So if something happens to us, we know where our stuff is going to go. But for our biggest asset, which is our business, we never really think about planning that until a catastrophic event occurs. So my biggest message here is plan early, plan often, stay on top of it, get a valuation checkup once a year, and follow that GPS plan. Know what you want to sell your business for, at what time frame, and what you're worth today.
Very cool. And another question, what are some of the tax implications I should be considering as I think about selling my business?
So that's a great question, and it's a tough question to answer because I don't know anything about you. If you have an S corp, a C corp, I don't partners, etc. So what we do with our clients from the beginning is we set them up with an attorney, a tax attorney that is CPAs and attorneys, to go through their financials, go through their bases. What are their bases? Go through their tax brackets, everything. go through all the stuff in the company, how we're going to allocate the purchase price. We're going to allocate sort of goodwill, FF&E, etc. Plus, we can also set them up with a trust where you could actually set up an irrevocable trust. We work with a company that does this. Set up an irrevocable trust. The proceeds of the sale. Let's say you sell your company for $20 million. That $20 million minus commissions goes straight into that trust. You're not paying capital gains, so you can take money out of that trust to invest in other businesses, other properties, and or you can live on the interest out of that trust. When you take the money out to live on, that's when you will pay taxes. Now, I'm not an expert on that subject, but I'm happy to set up a call with anybody else that's interested in talking to this company.
Excellent. Another question. If I want to use my business to fund some charitable passions of mine and some foundations and things like that, are there some ways to structure and plan for doing the exit in such a way that I get a tax benefit for donating my business or a portion of my business?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great question too. So I'm not a CPA, so it's hard for me to get into some of those things because there are CPAs and attorneys that specialize in that, and I have lots of resources that can assist with that. So yes, there are different ways that you can donate a percentage of your business, of the business proceeds, to a particular charity. And I'm not sure how the tax structure would affect you on that. You could also put the money in an irrevocable trust, and then the trust can turn around and donate money to that charitable fund. Also, if you're donating money as you go to different charities and church and things of that nature, which most business owners do, that is one of the add backs that we add back when we're normalizing the financials. But there is a way to donate proceeds of your sale. I just would rather you get that advice from a CPA because I'm not practicing one on TV.
A CPA or tax attorney?
A tax attorney. The firm that we deal with is they're tax attorneys and they're CPAs.
Excellent.
Meaning they're both. They have both.
Yep. Excellent. So Michelle, what is your special offer for those who buy your Exit Rich book? Because everybody, seriously, you need to buy this book. It's phenomenal. It's practical. It's great information, and it's a great roadmap. So,
Sure.
yeah.
So, and I also want to tell you a few more things about Exit Rich. It is an ink original, which is pretty important because it's very hard to get a book that is stamped by Ink's approval. Plus, it was endorsed by Steve Forbes, and Sharon Lecter is my co-author. So Sharon Lecter wrote the book. You might have read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, small little book written. She's a 5 times New York best time selling author with Rich Dad Poor Dad. She's written several books in the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and she is a CPA and a financial literacy expert and an advisor to many different presidents. She's been advisor to Obama and several other presidents. So she is great. And by the way, for all of you who don't have a federal trademark, her husband is an IP attorney and an intellectual property attorney. So what's nice about Exit Rich is you get the 20 years of my experience in the trenches dealing with thousands of business owners, but you also get a perspective from a CPA's approach and from an intellectual property attorney's approach. And they add that in the mentoring corner. But our offer is we're in pre-sale, so you can go to exitrichbook.com. Don't just go to Exit Rich, because that's what a lot of people are doing. You have to go to exitrichbook.com. And for $24.79, which is less than Amazon, and it includes shipping. So immediately when you order the book, we will email you the digital copy so you can start reading it today. We will send the hardcover to your doorstep. You will receive a lifetime membership into Exit Rich Book Club. Exit Rich Book Club is me doing video training on all these different strategies and techniques, answering questions, plus documentation. So a lot of clients come to me and say, Michelle, I've never even seen an organizational chart or an employee handbook or a non-compete. A lot of them say, I've never seen an LOI, a letter of intent, a purchase agreement, due diligence checklist, closing docs. It's all there. So all these documentations that you need to run and sell a business is in the book club for your review and your immediately download. So you can download the closing docs. You can download the LOI.
That's huge. I mean, how much would it cost to get a set of closing docs from a local attorney that doesn't even specialize in this area, it would cost you thousands of at least
Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. And
just
we always add more content to it too. And then you also get 30 days into Club CEOs, which is an organization of entrepreneurs where we do Q&As, hot seats, masterminds, and we really ask those transformational questions so we can help business owners not just survive, but thrive. And so they too can exit rich when they're ready.
yes. So everybody get that. We will make sure that you get a link and all that kind of stuff sent to you as well. Michelle, any parting thoughts or comments?
Did we get to everybody's questions?
We did, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think, my parting thoughts are, definitely business, business is tough and business is easy. It's both. I just think, a lot of business owners are struggling right now, but there's opportunities all around us. There's money all around us. There's a way to pivot. There's a way to really grow your business and be successful. The key is to make sure you align yourself with an expert like Action Coach. Make sure you're working with experts who have already been down that path, who have already done it, who can help you get there, who can help you shorten your road to success. And you don't know what you don't know. So pick up the phone and call me. I love business. I love helping people. I love saving businesses. I love selling businesses. Most importantly, I'm like a kid in a candy store. So I get so excited when I find out how an entrepreneur started their business, from their garage or from their kitchen table. I mean, my agriculture company, he has an 8th grade education. He started his agricultural business out of his pickup truck.
Wow.
So I just love these stories. And, business is fun. Entrepreneurship is not always easy. But it's always better to make sure that you align yourself with the experts that can get you to where you need to be and see things that you're not clearly seeing.
Exactly. And I so love the GPS model and the 6 Ps, and know where you're going, know where you're at today, measure that along the way. And
Yep.
what's really cool is you can set a plan, like you said earlier, I want to sell my business for $20 million at some point. Well, you might get along the way and you might change your plan and go, wow, we're growing and we're accelerating beyond that. I'm going to change my number to 30 million now. So
Right.
it doesn't lock you into anything, but it gives you direction. And just like a roadmap on your GPS, it tells you what to say yes to and what to say no to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because entrepreneurs all have a lot of us, not, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of us entrepreneurs have the shiny penny syndrome, right? And I have that too. Sometimes, people are bringing opportunities to me all the time, and I have to really look at what my goals are. Well, I want to sell my business for one day, and I own multiple businesses that I build to sell. And so I always got to make sure that I go back to my goals and my roadmap to make sure that I'm not, taking something that's not going to get me to where I need to be. So it's good to tell you what to say no to. It's good to help you know what to say yes to. And it's a plan. I mean, the bottom line is we need a plan. Every business owner needs an exit plan. And that's why 8 out of 10 businesses are not selling, because I hate to see any owner, get to the end of their business and not have anything to sell and work all these years and end up with nothing. I would rather help everyone I can exit as rich as they can.
Exactly. That's so important. So, Michelle, thank you so much for your time with us today. What's your phone number? You mentioned a couple times. What phone number should people call if they want
Sure.
something off you, ask a question, anything like that?
So let's make sure they also have my other website. So exitrichbook.com is where they can get the book. And they can go to seilertucker.com, which is my main website, Seiler Tucker. So maybe you can put it in the chats. And then my office number, you're gonna laugh at me because I don't even know what my 888 number is, but my office number is 504-525-1717. Call me about I forget the gentleman's name that has the client that's looking at buying his business. I encourage that gentleman to call me. But all of my contact information is on my website. And then you can also text, I don't want to give them too many choices, but they could text Michelle to 888-526-5750. And then all my social media pops up along with all my websites.
Excellent. And what we'll do is we'll get everybody that's on here a link to the recording, so you will have this information as well as in that email, we'll make sure everybody's got those specific links to the website, the contact details, that kind of stuff as well.
Sure. Well, great. Well, I hope everyone plans their exit. Hope everybody aligns with Action Coach, and hope everybody exit rich. Go out and get the book.
And I hope everybody, when you exit, you get in contact with Michelle and her team, because they will help you sell your business for a lot more money and probably faster.
Absolutely.
Most other people.
And we're not going to charge you any hefty retainer fees. So thank you, Craig, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's been awesome seeing you again, Michelle, and good luck on the book launch coming up here in a couple of weeks. I'm so excited for all the great things that are going to come from it.
Thank you so much. Me too. And thanks to everybody.
Bye-bye.
I wish I could see everybody's beautiful faces. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.